Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast. Hey, so today we have Brett Martin. Brett is one of those insane unicorns that he's both the co-founder of Charge Ventures while leading his own startups like Fonzi.ai, which is automating recruiting. Now, if you are thinking to yourself, how in the world do I either get investment or how in the world do investors think about the future of work? Brett is literally the most perfect expert and guest to listen to. So Brett, as you learn in this episode, he's had over 5 unicorns in his fund, and this is a fund of over 90 companies. And what I love most about Brett is when asking him, hey, how did you know, right? He was extremely humble because as every entrepreneur and investor knows, you don't really know if it's going to work. All you can do is swing hard, swing as fast as you can. And if it's the right time and you've taken enough swings, then something will hit. Now, in regards to the future of work, we're going to ask 3 very, very simple questions. And the first is going to be, what really is the future of work? The second is going to be, how will AI impact the future of work? And the third is, what is the value of a platform and a talent platform, and where do you see it going? Now, you're going to love this episode, and let me give you some context on the timing. We were with Brett last week at South by, and I can tell you this South by was one of the most exciting ones we've ever been to, and we've gone to a lot of them. And the reason was that this was the first one that we did feel like talent leadership could be extremely strong, and extremely strong from a business perspective. So this is not like an HR tech, our world, it's not just an HR tech thing. We can fundamentally transform every single business if we leverage talent and technology leadership. And Brett is the perfect person to teach us and show us how to do that. All right, without further ado, enjoy the episode. And then most important, go drive some change. Talent platform CEOs, I got a question for you. How in the world are you mobilizing every single person on your team? I'm talking about employee 23, who's been here for 2 years, as well as employee 86, who just joined last week. How are you powering them to drive their own onboarding, their own conversations, and really accelerating their time to be future work and flexible talent experts? Well, listen, we have an exciting solution for you. We call it Knowledge Hub. Knowledge Hub is literally everything that you and they need to drive flexible talent strategies and to evangelize to their clients and their teams what in the world flexible talent is and why they should care. Now, technically what it is, it's a daily briefing. So every single morning, Knowledge Hub members, they get the stats, they get industry challenges, they get figures. There's also quarterly reports that only Knowledge Hub members get on the state of talent. We're talking talent, external talent, technology, policy trends, you name it. And it's all customized for you, so you can build up. And so day 1, you're going to have a little bit of knowledge. Day 10, you're going to have a ton of knowledge. And by day 100, everyone in the organization is going to be building up their collective knowledge hubs. So I want you to go check it out right now and tell them Matthew sent you. All right, Brett, thank you so much for hopping on the Human Cloud Pod. It's been a super fun 15-minute debrief. I have no idea where this episode is going to go, and that makes me even more excited. The central theme for you listeners, the central theme we're going to talk about is a distributed workforce with a very, very particular bend about how the world's best entrepreneurs think about this. When we talk right now, so we're sitting in February of 2025, the past year and a half has been probably the hardest year in regards to just entrepreneurs in general, and having to really identify what are the core business values. And rather than hand waving and raising money off a pitch deck, I mean, entrepreneurs have been stretched more than I've ever seen in my career. So we have one of the best entrepreneurs in Brett. Can't wait for you all to meet him. And we're going to talk about distributed workforce. And so, Brett, from for you, how would you, let's just do the very boring, basic intro, who the hell are you besides having a much better hat than myself? Where are you based? What are you doing? Yeah, let's just start with you in a very, very boring intro.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for having me, Matt, and I'm excited to jam with your audience. So Brett Martin here. I'm the co-founder of Charge Ventures. Charge Ventures is a New York-based pre-seed venture capital fund. We're on our third fund, 90 plus investments at this point. We focus on consumer, prosumer, and PLG, bottoms up, SMB kind of SaaS. And, we're kind of first check investors. We're investors in I think at this point, 5 or 6 unicorns in our portfolio, including Clay, which is kind of the leading AI SDR, electric AI, kind of a services, IT provided through the cloud. A company called Transfix, which is kind of Uber for trucking. A company called Bison Trails, which is infrastructure for the crypto economy, acquired by Coinbase. So that's what we do. And I also am the co-founder of Fonzi.ai. Fonzi is the AI recruiter. So basically, takes all the mundane work of recruiters, incredibly fragmented and tedious tasks, and automates them. So companies can just get the best talent anywhere in the world as quickly as possible. So and then finally, I also teach data analytics and machine learning at Columbia Business School. So yeah, been spending a lot of time thinking about workforce issues, and excited to jam with them about them today.
I love it. So my most important question, Brett, is like, do you sleep? Like, what's the secret right now? Is there like, I was in SF early, right? Soylent was like the secret that was on every developer's desk. But like, what's your secret, man? There's no way you're sleeping 8 hours.
Yeah, honestly, my Aura Ring, I like have a frustrated interaction with it every morning where I look at it and I'm just like, wow, I wish I had a little more sleep. But no kids yet, so I still have a little extra time. I guess that's the secret at this point.
So I tried to get my wife to get me the Aura ring as our wedding ring, and she wouldn't bite. I tried my hardest, but I was like, this is great, it's an all in one. Always married, always getting health insights, whatever.
Wasn't having that, huh?
She wasn't having that, no, unfortunately. But listen, from Charge's perspective, when was it started? What was your original thesis? And how much has it changed? Because this is also like I'm so pumped to see on the VC side. And then if I think it would be helpful, like when you say first check in, are you leading? Are you following? What's that kind of look like for you? But so I'm super pumped to just kind of learn on the other side. What's been the past 4 years? What's it been like for you?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, charge is first check. So we write anywhere from, I think we've written checks as small as 50K and probably as large as 2.5. But our kind of bread and butter is $500,000 to $1 million checks, leading pre-seed rounds. So pulling them together, first capital companies raise. The thesis, I mean, it was a bet on kind of New York venture ecosystem. I've been building or investing. When you were saying the past couple of years are the hardest on entrepreneurs, I was just thinking about how old I am, since the great financial crisis was like a pretty tough time for people. 2015 was also kind of a weird time for entrepreneurs. And I wasn't even in tech. You know, During the first dot-com bust. So I think these things are cyclical. It's not great now for a lot of people, but it will get better. And the truth is, it's pretty amazing time for some people right now. I mean, if you hit the AI gold vein right now, there's a lot of companies going from $0 to $5 million in 1 year, which is a pretty preposterous growth ramp.
Yeah, yeah. And what from Charge's perspective? So originally it was, hey, let's capitalize on the New York venture industry. Um, San Francisco not cool enough for you, Brett? What you didn't want to rock the hoodie and code at 11 p.m. at a bar? But so that was the original thesis. I mean, how has it changed, right? Like how did you know early days? Was it deals you were close to? Did you have a very clear thesis? Like how have you seen it evolve?
Well, I mean, since I moved into New York tech, after a brief stint as an investment banker for a few years, and living on a sailboat, and living in Italy. I New York was a venture capital backwater. That's what most people probably don't realize, that, when I started in tech, New York was not the second largest market, but, actually the maybe fourth or fifth behind Boston and Austin and some other places. And so, in the time that I've been in tech, New York's gone from kind of backwater to the second largest, venture capital market in the world, um, ex China. And well, now actually, since the China venture capital market is dead, it's squarely the second largest market in the world. It's grown from a few billion, like less than 2 billion to over 10 billion, you know, dollars. So it's grown 10x probably. And so, rising sea lifts all boats. I think the biggest difference is, it was really grassroots and small. And there was a time where everyone in New York Tech used to go to the Skirball Center, which is the NYU auditorium, and go to the New York Tech meetup. And if you asked a question about a business model, you would literally get booed by 1,000 people. And now, venture capital is finance. Venture capital is no longer a cottage industry. It's professionalized, and there's firms that do this and firms that do that, and multi-billion-dollar firms, and they're investment advisors, and it's a very different scene. I think people might say, "Oh, is this bad?" It's not like it was. I don't know. I mean, for entrepreneurs, it sounds like 10 times as much venture capital is probably a good thing.
It's pretty good. No, it's pretty good. And I wonder from your, I mean, so you're sitting on both sides, right? Like the how do you say it? Like the feeling of an entrepreneur at times can be, well, this investor doesn't get me, right? Or this VC sitting on the other side, they've never operated, right? They've never actually founded. And then here you are going, no, that's actually not true. I am a founder as well. So what's it like being both? I mean, do you think it's a necessity to build a good company? Do you think it's a necessity to have a good fund? But what's it like being both?
Yeah, I think it's funny. A lot of people will ask. I think there's this trope that, like, you need to be a great, you need to get your operating experience to be a good investor. Um, it might be self-serving to say that. I don't actually think that's right. I mean, I think there's plenty of people that were just, amazing investors. Fred Wilson, probably the, OG New York venture capitalist, best VC, in New York history, or Roger Ehrenberg from IA Ventures. These guys weren't operators. Roger tried, but he didn't succeed with his, company. I, I actually think you can be a great investor without it. I think that probably being a founder gives you much better empathy for companies starting, and I think that's something we do quite well at Charge Ventures. But I do think that actually being a founder helps you with portfolio support. It helps you support your companies better. I think being an active founder, like I am, I think my tactical advice to founders is much more relevant and timely. I think if you started a company 20 years ago and had a success in the dot-com boom, like, how really relevant is your, marketing or technical advice today? Like, I mean, it's completely different. Like, so I think that if you're actively in the mix, then that can help you give people more advice, better
Yeah.
advice.
And I wonder, so if you could you, I mean, the top five, you mentioned there were six unicorns, right? And there was, was it IT automation, it was sales development, SD or automation as well. But so if you could list out those six again, just so our listeners hear them, because that's unique, Brett, to be honest, especially in the past 4 years, I would say, like I raised my last round in 2020. And from 2020 to 2022, I'll be honest, it felt like such hand waving crap in terms of it felt like there were so many funds out there, like so many seed and pre seed funds, yet a lot of them didn't have any unicorns. And it just felt like it was mostly like content leadership or thought leadership that was driving most VCs. So for you, I just want to make sure like our listeners know, okay, you're not going to show up and then not be around in the next year. Like you've overcame the hump. You're actually investing. You're not just like a glorified influencer. which there was so much of that over in 2020, 2022. There was it was like every person to your left and right was all of a sudden having a pre-seed fund. And it was like, what's your thesis? Usually not ruthless, but whatever. So if you could list those five or six, and then my question to you is there patterns of like core essentials that either these companies or these founders needed to have? And is it something as simple as like just keep going, right? Which you're obviously it's true, but kind of generic. But so like if you could list out those unicorns again, and then what are the patterns that you've seen across all those that made them successful versus the others?
Yeah, I mean, first off, just a couple things. One, I'm not alone in my fund. I've got a partner. His name's Chris Hibachi. We've been working together for 10 years. Two, definitely have had a bunch of companies become unicorns. I have had some companies who cease to be unicorns. So, I've learned a couple things about, just because you have paper markups doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to achieve liquidity. I think I've done some good work getting liquidity out, and then there's some places where I wish I had gotten more. So these are things. But if I look across, what did I mention? I talked about Transfix and a company called Grin, which is a CRM for influencer marketing, and a company called Electric and Bison Trails, and then we've had some good that was in the crypto space, and another company called LivePeer that we invested in that got to $1 billion. And then, what are the common factors across all of those? I think that's the problem. I think everyone's looking for like, oh, there's this like common, like thing that makes companies a unicorn. But like by definition, I think what makes a company a unicorn is there's something unique about it that is unlike everything else. And all those stories are really fun. I mean, I think the Clay story is kind of in vogue right now. Everyone talks about Clay. It's founded by these guys, Kareem Amin and Nikolai Rusan, and Varun also came in as a co-founder. And that's a fun one because it's really hot right now. I get a bunch of people reaching out to me and being like, "Oh, you're an early investor in Clay. Congratulations, you're so smart," and which is hilarious because like that company is like a 7-year overnight success story. Like I invested in that in 2017, and they took years, like literally walk in the woods, and they got some early great investors, Bold Start and First Round and Sequoia, but then it just kind of took years to figure out product market fit. I mean, honestly, the product didn't change that much, but they had to find the go to market, and now everyone talks about how great you are for investing in that company, which is hilarious because no one was telling me I was great at investing in this company 3 years ago. And and then I have other companies where they mooned and they got to $1 billion, and like I said, then now I might barely get my money back. And so I don't want to like out those companies, but like I was real hot before for those, and now I'm not so hot. So I don't know. At this point, I don't really think too much about markups. If I return cash, I feel good, and otherwise, I keep going. So in Clay's case, resilience obviously played a huge factor. In some other cases, people just picked the right market and got out early. I mean, Bison Trails, really smart guys, amazing guys, Joe Luz, Aaron Henshaw. They had built and sold a company to Etsy before. It was this marketplace called it was a electronics marketplace called Grand Street. And then they were like, oh, what's the next big trend? This was around, I don't know, 2019. When was it? 2019. And they were like, oh, it's crypto. They're engineers. So they said, let's learn it from the very bottom. Let's literally build a crypto mine. So they went to the Pacific Northwest. They got land. They built a warehouse on water. And then they, made a crypto mine, and that's not really a venture backable opportunity, but we put in an angel check just to be a part of whatever these guys were building. And they said, well, okay, well, this crypto thing is, this mining thing is going to make money, but I don't think it's a big play. Like, we've got an idea for like a big scalable venture backable play, and that's called Bison Trails. And it was basically like selling infrastructure, staking infrastructure, picks and shovels to the crypto ecosystem. And I said, okay, well, that's something I can wrap my head around. I've been having I had a hard time investing in just like crypto pump and dumps, but that sounded valuable to me. And so we invested, and these guys like just immediately took off, got quickly to revenue, and then Coinbase swooped them up, and they became the infrastructure layer for Coinbase. And then we got great Coinbase DPO did a direct listing, and it was a pretty wild time because I was sitting there holding all this Coinbase stock on the day of the IP, the direct public listing. And, I'm a small fish. We had a few, $1 million. And it was pretty wild because, all these other people have Morgan Stanley, kind of managing their liquidity and, trading on day one. And there was just, me sitting there with my brokerage account being like, oh my God, I hope I don't screw this up and, lose millions of dollars. But we got out, and I'm happy to report we actually, sold at like $370 or something was our average selling price of Coinbase stock, which if you go look, like actually the chart will never be that high because it was only that high on day one. So that felt pretty good. That was a win.
I'm just imagining you in your pink hat and then a bunch of Morgan Stanley, a bunch of people in suits next to you. And I wish I could have seen that. But so, diving into, part of what, I don't know, the founder journey is like, and this, like you kind of have to be quirky enough to go outside the box, but then you can't go too far out the box, or you have to just become in the box. But I think one of the key themes from hearing you is like, you do need to be able to execute on a trend. So it doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? There does need to be a trend. You do have to have the technical skills, whether it's go to market or actually building it. And so I think this dovetails into, all right, now you've seen, 90 plus companies, you've seen everything you've seen in the past 5 years. What are the trends that you look at and you say, yep, all right, this is where the opportunity is? And I know we talked about the distributed workforce is one of those trends. So I'm like trying not to bias you too much, but I have a feeling we're going to talk about that. But so when you look at the next, and you look, like, what time horizon do you look at, by the way? Do you say, hey, this is going to happen in the next 2 to 10 years? Do you say, hey, this is going to happen in the next 5 years? So like, what time horizon are you putting on? But like, what are the key trends that are really top mind for you?
Yeah, I actually want to highlight something you just said, which I think bears repeating, which is that every great company rides a massive wave.
Yeah.
Right? Like Microsoft riding the PC revolution, Apple, riding mobile, AWS, Amazon, riding the web, and then again with AWS riding the cloud. And I think it's very important, particularly for younger entrepreneurs, to like remember that they have to ride a wave and they have to exist in some sort of macro context because great companies ride waves; they don't create them. And so, is an important part of an entrepreneur, kind of knowing like, okay, am I on the right wave? Is this good? I'm a surfer, so like wave selection is very important. Which wave you ride determines a lot of how good of a ride you get. Where you enter the wave determines a lot on how successful the ride is. And so, part of being an entrepreneur is like spotting the wave early and getting on it at the right place, and then realizing that like, hey, if this wave didn't turn out like I had hoped, right? So, our company, my company, Kumo Space, that I founded with my co-founder, Yang Mao, we started writing, okay, it was definitely a pandemic baby. And we built, basically virtual offices for remote and distributed teams. So productivity tools for remote and distributed teams. We're like, hey, there's going to be way more remote work in the future. And that wave was amazing until it wasn't. It was a huge tailwind until return to office came, and all of a sudden it was not cool to have a remote workforce, and all the big companies are pushing you against it. And I think we had to realize like, hey, this actually is not going to be the $1 billion, multi-billion dollar category. There was literally 50, 60 companies launched in our space. And, by the end of it, we were the only company standing. I mean, everyone else pivoted out. Us and this other company called Gather that Sequoia invested in were the only companies left. And even then, there wasn't much of a market to win. So we kind of realized, okay, we had been helping all these companies build remote teams, and we still believe that building remote teams is valuable. We just didn't think that there was going to be specialized tooling to do it. And so we said, okay, how can we leverage what we learned and what we know to be true, and what's the next wave? And so we were like, oh, okay, people are still going to build remote distributed workforces. The next platform is AI. How can AI help people build remote and distributed workforces? Well, okay, let's build an AI recruiter. So that's how we built Fonzi.ai. And, what are we talked to a bunch of folks recruiting and building, and we kept hearing the same problems, which is like, hey, when we posted remote work job, there are literally in 24 hours, we get thousands of candidates. And the inbound channel for finding, remote workers basically does not work, because one person cannot go sift through thousands of candidates to find the needle in the haystack. And, it turns out that so people just give up, and they actually only count on outbound and referrals. And basically we're like, well, that's a shame. And also it turns out that those channels are ruined because a lot of these candidates are fake. Many are embellishing their resumes. That's one thing, but I'm talking about literally fake candidates. There are humans that do not exist who are applying. Turns out a lot of these people are actually North Koreans. I mean, I know that sounds insane, but there are literally millions of North Koreans applying for remote software engineering jobs. I'll send you a Google link, a link on Google that Google wrote about this issue. And the problem is you can't, some of these people just want to work and send money back to their family. Some of them want to steal get on your corporate internet. And so how do you sift through this? So, one of the features we're building with Fonzie is, fake candidate detection. And, we can get into how that works, but so that's sort of how we jumped off one wave and got on the next one and tried to apply what we learned from the last wave to the next.
Well, I think so. Let me double click on. It's not necessarily that remote was wrong. It's just that the applications weren't necessarily what they said they were. And I do think so. One of the biggest, I guess you could say, frustrations from 2020 to 2024 is that, to me, remote was never the end goal, right? It's never been like, hey, I want my company to be remote. I always, in a perfect world, I would literally have a company in Newport, Massachusetts. It would be all full-time employees. And I would never even once worry about HR, procurement, or any of that stuff, right? In a perfect world. But the reality is I need the best talent. The best talent is not in Newport, right? I can't afford to have the best talent 100% of the time. All right, well, now I'm starting to deal with, a fractional workforce because I need to be able to scale up, scale down when we need it. So remote then is that kind of glue, but it's not the end state, right? It's just a medium to get to what we need, which is I need to make more money. And so I think there was a lot of hype around remote's the thing, remote's the thing. And the reality is it wasn't, it was just is a medium, right? And we are seeing a lot of pushback with return to office. But so I want to make sure I double click on that I also, I love the way you analyzed that of hey, we're a tool of remote. Remote's not going to go away, but it's not necessarily the end all be all. And this is where kind of distributed workforce. Now, how tough was that pivot? I mean, did you have to say, all right, we're building net new. We're going to take some of some of the actual tech stack or some of the code base and over here, how'd you pivot? Give us the actual pivot, because a lot of people don't understand how painful it is when you look at all that you've built for years and realize, do I just throw this away and move on to the next one? So how much did you take over with you into Fonzi?
Well, I mean, that's the good news is we definitely didn't throw anything away. I mean, Kumo Space still survives and thrives. It's actually a growing business, and we still support it and are launching some fixes for this and that. It's just more that and I think this ties into the broader trend, which is that it's not that remote is going away. I mean, people are still working remotely, and it actually turns out that a lot of our customers are in the Middle East for Kumo Space, because
Interesting.
for them, being able to work remotely is just like like people had like multiple hour commutes, and so
Yeah.
being able to work remotely was like life changing, and people were happy to sit in a virtual office versus like commute 2 hours to work. So it's more just that, again, the remote trend existed pre COVID. People were, it just was more offshoring, right? It was like, hey, we're going to offshore jobs. And I think that anytime anything becomes um, kind of not front office, anytime something becomes ancillary skill, right, people will try to push it to the lowest cost place that it can be served. And, intelligence, uh, intelligence is evenly distributed across the world. Opportunity is not. And so I think, people will find smart people all over the world and try to push jobs to wherever the cost is the lowest. Like that's not gonna stop. And so we said, hey, like, let's leverage what we've already built, like keep building, keep growing, Kumo Space, and take, some of the profits that we're making from that, and then kind of deploy them into this, new technology, into the new platform, which is AI, and try to build something that will give all, our existing and our new customers leverage. Actually, I think like the people who can use Fonzi is a much broader audience than the folks that are using Kumo Space. So that's why we jumped on it.
So let me ask you a very it's not a sales pitch, I promise. So the first question is going to be, what does success look like with Fonzie? Right? Like, let's try to get as tactical as possible. Second is, who's the one that's succeeding? Because also where part of my brain goes is, number one, what kind of company? So you mentioned like, okay, a company in the Middle East, but so are we talking large company, mid, small, startup? And then also, is this going to replace talent acquisition functions? Does this enable HR functions to go from 100 people down to one, but then having, Fonzie to scale up, scale down? So first thing, like success, what does it look like? Does it look like more candidates cheaper? How do you define success at Fonzie?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, on my big goals little notepad I have, it's a if we place 1 million candidates, that's what success looks like. Success is getting 1 million people new jobs, which I think would be meaningful for us as a company, but also impactful, very impactful in the world. Yeah, that's our North Star. I think in terms of like the benefits for companies is yeah, I guess like I said, we're an investor in Clay basically lets you replace a team of 20 BDRs with one technical marketer, right? And so it's like leveraging AI to automate all of this rote manual work that people are doing, sending customized emails out at one at a time. Clay lets one person do that, thousands of emails at a time. And I view kind of what we're building at Fonzie be somewhat similar. We act as a full kind of service recruiter today, and we actually have recruiters on staff so to fill the gap so that you get a very white glove experience. But on the back end, the idea is that instead of having to hire teams of humans to be phone screening and sending outbound emails and phone screening and updating ATSs, that one more technical recruiter can actually manage the entire funnel with Fonzie helping her. And so we think that will significantly bring down the cost of finding top talent. And our goal is to basically consolidate a very highly large and fragmented um, recruiting market.
Now, related to that, you kind of mentioned the human in the loop. I want to double click on that. So it's not all a digital worker. It sounds like you mentioned that there was a human in the loop, meaning a human recruiter. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think like we are building agents for a ton of things. We have agents for finding candidates. We have agents for enriching candidates. Agents for reaching out to candidates. Agents for um, evaluating resumes and LinkedIn's and doing phone screens and evaluating phone screens, et cetera, right? That said, our goal is to automate kind of the boring, rote manual work that takes up, 60, 70% of a recruiter's time so that recruiters can focus on what makes them uniquely good and human and understanding the nuance and the context of a company and building relationships with hiring managers and candidates. And, I think the fundamental thing a recruiter does is actually, uh, bring together supply and demand and draw those and like pull those two sides together, negotiate with both sides so that they connect. Because there's often a gap in the beginning of the process. And that's why I think, fundamentally recruiting will always be kind of more of a managed marketplace. I think obviously there's like, a lot of workplace. I think that for more smaller, discretized work, right? There's lots of great labor marketplaces out there if you want to get like a very specific thing done. But I think if you're trying to hire full time, you're looking for more than a task. You're looking for a partner that is going to kind of respond with you. And I think that like bringing the two sides together there is the core function a recruiter serves. And so, yeah, we think there's always going to be a human element to that.
I love the looking for a partner that will respond with you. I think that totally resonates, and I think so you called it a managed marketplace, but one of the things that we're seeing is if you look at the freelance industry, we have zero unicorns. We have two public companies, which are Upwork and Fiverr, and maybe you could say TaskRabbit, which was acquired by IKEA. And I guess you could kind of say Uber, but focusing more on like the professional services, the real skill work. But if you look at the good ones look actually more like agencies and more like platforms than they do marketplaces. And part of that reason is, like as you mentioned, like you as a CEO, I don't want to have 100 different freelancers that I manage, right? I actually just want one partner. It's just why I go and I hire a consulting firm because I can only deal with one principal and then they handle everything else. And so I think that's such a crucial point. And also the point of automating the 60% so they can focus on the relationships. And here's one thing that's funny to me, and I wonder how you think about this, Brett. We were meeting with NASA last week, and one of the things that they said was every technology so far has taken 10 years to go from initiated to actually understood. And I think that this like automating the 60% of crap to then focus on what you're best at. I mean, I've been hearing this for at least 5 years, and it still feels like, okay, we're going to just say this forever? But to me, it sounds like, all right, we're actually in the middle of the maturity of this augmentation. And remember, I was at Microsoft, right? So augmentation was all we would say, be like knowledge graph and augment. But so your perspective, right? I mean, do you think this is the wave? Is the wave augmentation and AI is the medium? Is the wave just distributed workforces? How would you define this? Is kind of the last question is how would you define this current wave that you, Fonzie, and we're all trying to surf? How would you define it?
I mean, the wave is this sort of the marginal cost of intelligence is going to zero, and what do we do with all that excess intelligence? And then intelligence could be defined as a bunch of different things, right? There's like emotional intelligence and quantitative intelligence and situational contextual intelligence. And I think like the whole generative part of the AI is that like, oh, we can generate content, whether it's words or audio or video, or right. And so now we can kind of like generate this content that might be conversations or interactions with other humans. Like now we can have those interactions at almost zero marginal cost, whereas before it took the time to have a phone screen or have an email. And so I think, what which parts of those conversations, for recruiting and talent acquisition, right? It's like, okay, well, what parts of those interactions were meaningful parts of them were strategic, which parts of them were decisive, and which parts of them were just like literal rote and like manual work that could be automated, or where's the alpha. And so I think like I think that in talent, right, like I said, the problem is very specific. It's just that there's a hard matching problem that actually AI exacerbated at first. It's making it harder. It's saying, hey, people can now auto apply. People can now, keyword stuff to their resume for every job they apply to, right? So like it actually made the problem worse for employers trying to figure out who to select. And now it's also going to fix the problem that it made, which is, it'll help employers sift through, all these candidates. And so, I mean, this world where bots are talking to bots, like it's happening in TA right now. Candidates are using bots to apply to a bunch of people. Employers are using bots to evaluate and sift through a bunch of people. And so essentially you're having this world where, our bots are talking to each other and figuring out who the best candidate is. And that's fundamentally what's happening. Is we used to have humans that made that managed marketplace. They were called, they're called recruiters. And now we have AI that's doing a lot of that work, and humans are sitting on top of it and just making the most important decisions.
My initial reaction to what you just said is we replaced a human TA assembly line with bots, and it asks, what's that fucking word? It acerbate. God, this is where sometimes, it accentuated problems we already had. But so listen, Brett, as we close out, I think there's two angles of this that to me really jump. The first is the ability to take a general set of problems and decompose that into what is the wave, right? Like that is something that most of us founders, we're just stuck in the weeds, and we have to be able to do that. And most of you executives, whether you're doing your yearly planning or whatever roadmap planning, you also need to be able to do this. Second, though, is really breaking down the distributed workforce. And I think that might be the final sign off for me, at least, is that, listen, we've taken an age-old approach, and we've taken a human assembly line, and whether it's HR, procurement, or TA, we've said, all right, let's put AI on top of this, or let's have bots replace the humans. And it might take something more, right? It might take brand new processes to do that. And here's my closeout. You need a partner, not just another marketplace or not just another tool. And so as you mentioned with Fonzi, the way you put it was looking for a partner that will respond with you. I think that's the perfect way to put it, right? It's a partner that responds with you, meaning when shit goes south, the partner doesn't just disappear or make sure you're paying their invoice, right? They're responding with you. So, Brett, I want to give you the final sign off on what you want to tell our audience. And then most importantly, where can they find you is going to be one of the key questions. But what's the final thing you want to tell to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm super bullish on the potential of AI to augment humans, but that doesn't mean we have to we can stop acting like humans in the sense that I think we could use AI responsibly or not, and we need to remember our humanity as we start to kind of automate a lot of things. That's the core mission of Fonzi, is to actually make the recruiting process more human, not less, right? So not less ghosting, no ghosting of candidates, helping people know where they stand, helping people understand what they got right or wrong in an interview so they can improve. What parts of their skill set do they need to burnish up? How do they get how do they advance their career? I think that's a big part of our mission, and I hope everyone else who's building with AI tries to aim for something higher as well.
I love it. And where can our listeners find you, Brett? Where should they be? Should they go to your site? Is there, where can they find
you can check out Fonzi, FONZI.ai if you want to check out Fonzi, or charge.vc if you want to check out Charge, and just hit me up on LinkedIn.
I love it.
And reference the Human Cloud podcast.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Brett, thanks for hopping on, man.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.